Somewhere in your garage or your online shopping cart, there's a part you've been dreaming about. A lighter frame, a set of carbon wheels, an electronic group set. Something that promises to make you faster and costs a fortune to do it. And here's the strange thing about that dream. The upgrade that would actually transform your riding, more than any of those expensive parts, more than all of them combined, costs a tiny fraction of the price. Most cyclists have never bought it. Many have never even considered it. And the reason they haven't is a fascinating collision between how the industry makes its money and how your own brain decides what's worth buying. So let's ask the question the marketing would rather you never asked. What if the single best upgrade in all of cycling isn't a part at all? What if it's the way your body actually sits on the bike you already own? To understand why this matters so much, you have to start with a simple, almost obvious fact that somehow everyone forgets. You only touch the bicycle in 3 places: your hands on the handlebars, your backside on the saddle, and your feet on the pedals. That's it. 3 small points of contact. And through those 3 points passes everything that matters: all of your weight, all of your power, and when something is wrong, all of your pain. Think about what that means. The frame material everyone argues about, the carbon versus the titanium, never actually touches your body. But those 3 contact points touch it for every single second you ride. Get them right, and the whole machine disappears beneath you and you fly. Get them wrong, and it doesn't matter how exotic the frame is. You'll be uncomfortable, you'll be slower, and eventually you'll be hurt.
That is the entire case for bike fit in a single idea. The parts that touch you matter more than the parts that don't. So let's walk through those 3 points, starting with the one that matters most, because getting this one wrong poisons everything else: saddle height. It is the single most important measurement on the entire bike. Get it wrong, and no other adjustment you make can fully compensate. Get it right, and you've solved roughly half of most people's fit problems in one move. Here's the rough idea the professionals work from. When the ball of your foot is over the pedal and your leg is at the very bottom of the stroke, your knee shouldn't be locked straight, and it shouldn't be heavily bent either. It should sit in a sweet spot, a gentle bend of somewhere around 25 to 35 degrees. Too high, and your hips rock from side to side as you reach for the pedals, and you get saddle sores and pain. Too low, and you crush the front of your knee with every single pedal stroke, thousands of times a ride, while quietly throwing away power. One measurement, that much consequence. And this leads straight to the most expensive mistake in all of cycling comfort, the one almost everyone makes: the saddle. When your backside hurts, and sooner or later it will, the instinct is overwhelming. Buy a new saddle, a softer one, a fancier one, the one with the magic cutout. So you buy it, and it doesn't fix the problem. So you buy another, and a graveyard of rejected saddles piles up in the garage. But here's the secret the saddle companies will never lead with. Most saddle pain isn't caused by the saddle. It's caused by your position. A saddle that's too high makes you rock and chafe. A saddle tilted nose up jams pressure exactly where you don't want it. A reach that's too long drags you forward onto the narrow point. The right saddle in the wrong position will still hurt, and the wrong saddle in the right position often feels just fine. Before you spend another cent on rubber and foam, the fix is almost always in the setup you already have. Now to the second contact point, your hands and the handlebars they rest on. This is where the tension lives, literally. If your reach to the bars is too long, or the bars are too low for your body and flexibility, the strain travels straight up into your neck, your shoulders, your lower back, and out into numb, tingling hands. And here we run into one of the great myths of cycling, the one that makes so many riders miserable. They see the professionals slammed low over their bikes, impossibly aerodynamic, and they think that low, aggressive position is the fast one, the correct one, the one to copy. But here's the truth that changes everything. An aerodynamic position is only fast if you can actually hold it. A pro can hold that brutal position because they're flexible, strong, and it's their job. Put that same position on an ordinary rider, and they can't sustain it. They tense up, they sit up to relieve the pain. The small plastic cleats that clip your shoes to the pedals control the angle and position of your feet through every rotation. And if they're even slightly misaligned, that tiny error doesn't stay tiny. You repeat it thousands of times every single ride, and repeated thousands of times, a millimeter of misalignment becomes knee pain, becomes an overuse injury, becomes the thing that stops you riding at all. It's the perfect example of how fit works. Small causes, endlessly repeated, become enormous effects. This is why the details matter so much more than they seem to. So let's talk about what all of this is actually worth, because it turns out the stakes are far higher than comfort alone. Let's start with the thing cyclists chase hardest: speed, free watts. When a rider has a genuinely bad position, correcting it typically hands back something in the region of 5 to 15 watts. Let that sink in. That is power you didn't have to train for, power you didn't have to buy in a lighter wheel or a slipperier frame. It was there all along, being wasted by a position fighting your body, and a fit simply stops the leak. For a rider optimizing their hip angle, sustainable power, the power you can actually hold for hours, can improve by a noticeable margin. Now, I have to be honest with you here, because bike culture doesn't sell magic. These gains depend entirely on how bad your starting position was. If you're already dialed in, a fit won't transform you. The fit isn't a performance potion, it's the correction of an error, and the bigger the error, the bigger the reward. But the watts, honestly, are the smaller half of the story. The bigger half is pain and injury, and whether you get to keep riding at all.
The list of injuries that come straight from a bad position reads like a catalog of everything that makes cyclists quit. Aching knees, the stabbing outer knee pain of a tight IT band, a lower back that screams on long rides, hands that go numb and never quite wake up, saddle pain that turns every ride into an ordeal. These aren't bad luck. They're overwhelmingly the predictable result of a body being forced into the wrong shape over and over for hours. And here's the part that should reframe the entire cost conversation. A bike fit doesn't just fix the pain you already have. It prevents the injuries you haven't got yet, and it very often costs less than a single course of physiotherapy for the exact injury your position was busy creating. You can pay a little now to sit correctly, or a lot later to repair the damage of sitting wrong. That's the real choice. Picture how this actually plays out, because it's a story that repeats in bike shops and physio clinics constantly. A rider starts getting a nagging ache in one knee around the 2-hour mark. They ignore it because they're fit and it's only a niggle. It gets a little worse each month. They start cutting rides short to avoid it. They buy a new saddle because that's the reflex, and it does nothing because the knee was never about the saddle. Eventually, the ache becomes a real injury, and now they're off the bike entirely, paying a physiotherapist to undo the damage, doing rehab exercises, losing the fitness they worked so hard to build. And somewhere in that whole expensive, miserable chain, the actual cause was a saddle a centimeter too high and a cleat rotated a few degrees wrong. The kind of thing a good fit would have caught and corrected in an afternoon, before any of it.
The tragedy of bad fit is almost never dramatic. It's slow, it's quiet, and it's completely preventable, which is exactly what makes skipping the fit so costly. Which brings us, at last, to the strangest part of this whole story. If bike fit is this powerful, this cheap, and this well understood, why does almost nobody prioritize it? And the answer is a paradox so common it has a kind of grim comedy to it. Picture the typical committed cyclist. They've spent 3, 4, 5,000 on the bike, another few hundred on a power meter to measure their effort, hundreds more on aero socks and a fancy helmet chasing tiny fractions of a watt. They will happily spend £1,000 on a frame upgrade that saves 100 grams and a rounding error of aerodynamic drag. And then they will balk, absolutely refuse, at spending 200 on the one thing that would fix the knee pain stopping them from finishing their favorite ride. They have optimized everything that touches the air and ignored everything that touches their body. It is, when you step back, almost unbelievable, and yet it is the norm. So why do we do this? Why is the smartest purchase in cycling the one we're most determined to skip? Part of it is us, and part of it is the industry, and it's worth being honest about both. The human part is simple. A shiny new component is a thing. You can hold it, photograph it, show it to your friends, bolt it on, and feel like you've done something. A bike fit is invisible. There's nothing to display, nothing to unbox, no glinting carbon to admire. It's just you, sitting.
And the industry part is just as simple, and no one has to be a villain for it to be true. The business of cycling is built on selling parts. There are entire marketing machines devoted to convincing you that the next component will transform you. There is no marketing machine devoted to telling you to spend $200 on a fit and then stop buying things for a while. Watts per kilo sells frames. Your knee will stop hurting doesn't. So the message you hear constantly from every direction points you toward the expensive object and away from the cheap, personal, invisible fix.
That's not a conspiracy, it's just where the money is, and it quietly shapes what you think you need. So let's turn all of this into something you can actually act on, whoever you are and whatever you ride. The core principle is simply this: reverse the order. Before you spend on the next part, spend on the fit. Now, that doesn't always mean writing a check to a professional. A great deal of fit is something you can begin yourself, carefully. Start with that saddle height because it matters most, and change one thing at a time and test it over real rides before you touch anything else. Riding indoors on a trainer can reveal fit problems faster because you can't coast or shift around to hide them. Get the saddle height right, then the fore and aft, then the reach and the height of the bars, methodically, patiently. For a lot of riders, that careful self-adjustment solves the majority of their discomfort for free. But there's a discipline to it that most people skip, and skipping it is why so many home adjustments go wrong. The temptation when something hurts is to change 3 things at once and go for a ride, and then you have no idea which change helped and which made it work.
The whole method depends on moving slowly. One adjustment, a few real rides to let your body actually adapt to it, and only then the next. Write down every number before you change it, so you can always go back if you make things worse. It's tedious, and that's precisely why it works, because your body needs time to tell you the truth about a position, and it can only tell you clearly when you've changed one thing at a time. But know where the line is. If you have pain that keeps coming back, if you have an old injury or a real asymmetry between your left and right sides, if you're riding many hours a week and plan to for years, then a professional fit is one of the best pieces of money you will ever spend in this sport. A good fitter brings objectivity you can't have about your own body and tools you can't replicate at home. Video analysis, motion capture, pressure mapping that shows exactly where you're being hurt. And here's the detail that dissolves the cost objection entirely. A fit isn't a one-time expense that vanishes. The position it gives you is good for years, and it transfers to your next bike if the geometry is similar, as long as you write your numbers down. You're not buying a single ride. You're buying years of riding across multiple bikes without pain. Spread across all of that, the cheapest upgrade in cycling gets cheaper still. So here is where we land. The most expensive bike in the world set up wrong is slower and more painful than a modest bike set up right. The frame you argue about never touches you. The 3 points that do, the saddle, the bars, the pedals, quietly decide everything: your comfort, your power, and whether your knees still.
It was the fit between you and the machine, and it has been sitting there, cheap and ignored, the entire time. So before you buy the next shiny thing, do the one thing almost nobody does. Get the fit right first. Redirect a small slice of what you were going to spend on grams and watts toward the way your own body meets the bike. Do that, and you won't just ride faster and hurt less. You'll finally understand what you were actually paying for all along. Because in the end, you're not buying a bicycle. You're buying the relationship between your body and that bicycle. And that relationship is the one thing no expensive part can ever fix for you.